Hello everybody, and I hope today is treating you well. Today we're going to venture deeper into the Heisei era because we have Godzilla vs. Mothra, the Battle for Earth. It's quite a title. We're going to go ahead and shorten it down to Godzilla vs. Mothra 1992. Alright, Godzilla vs. Mothra is honestly the last Heisei era Godzilla movie that I ever watched. Why? Well, because when I was younger, there were just other Godzilla movies that I was just more intrigued of. You know, the monsters I'd never seen before, like Destroyer, like Space Godzilla, like Biollante, and I was still searching for a Godzilla vs. Bagan movie. I mean, where was that out? Well, turns out such movie didn't even exist. Let us also keep in mind, a bit before this movie came out, Bagan was also kicked around to be a potential opponent for Mothra, which may mean this movie might be a blueprint for the incoming Mothra series. But Mothra's return was incoming, and it was only suitable that they'd go ahead and follow up King Ghidorah with possibly Toho's second most iconic monster, which is obviously Mothra. With this being the fourth entry of the Heisei era, I think that Toho kinda understood. We're gonna have to go ahead and bank up the past and bring those classic kaiju back into these movies. Mothra, as I said, is the one that is in this movie, but there's also Batra in this movie. And really, I don't think marketing this movie as Godzilla vs. Batra would have carried this movie's weight alone. I mean, it feels like it has to have Mothra's name in the title. You already have Mothra in the movie, so let's make sure this movie is marketed and surrounding Godzilla and Mothra. My issue with this movie, though, is it is extremely spotty in the writing department. That's where this movie loses me a little bit. It has its strong points, but the thing is, though, it loses me, and the movie itself, I tend to find it a little forgettable in this era of Godzilla movies. I also don't want to disregard any fond memories that have tied to this movie. I do recall seeing this movie with fellow Godzilla fans, as it was one of the movies that was on the billing of G-Fest 2018. That was something special to me. Seeing this movie in front of a roaring crowd that absolutely was digging it, and it made me kind of appreciate the movie a little bit more. Again, I'm not saying this is an all-time favorite of mine, it's still lower down the line of Godzilla movies, but there is something to appreciate about it. So let's not delay this any further and just get into the film. We begin following the events of 1991's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Godzilla remains in the ocean all until a meteoroid slams right into his location, disrupting the king of the monsters from his nap. And a giant egg is uncovered. A brand new kaiju named Batra has also been awakened. So a key difference in this movie wastes no time introducing the kaiju. I feel like it's within the first 30 minutes of this movie, they are all introduced and their presence is far felt. The last three movies, however, though, it took some time. The movie spent maybe about a full hour presenting, fleshing out the plot line. This movie does have its own plot, but the thing is, it feels less transparent than what we saw before. It's straight to the point, this movie. So remember how in the last movie, undertones from Terminator and Back to the Future were incorporated? Well, this one, a key plot point early on, this movie gives us Indiana Jones adventure vibes. These aren't even undertones. It's blunt and as clear as daylight. It's just there. The movie also tends to give us throwbacks and hints and winks back to Godzilla vs. Mothra in 1964. You know, with the whole anti-capitalism message, greed, and basically humans attempting to kidnap the egg, and eventually they do end up kidnapping the twins. It's all there, but the thing is, it feels so much less fleshed out. I don't know. This movie, to me, it's just severely in the shadow of the 64 movie. That movie just feels extremely superior. This one does have its cool things that it goes about and does, but if you want to go ahead and talk about the storyline and how they approached the whole idea of the anti-capitalism message, this one doesn't do it as good. It just is kind of thrown in there. That's just the big thing about this movie. It has its plot which just isn't really fleshed out. It does go ahead and flesh out the connection between Mothra and Batra at least, but it still feels like a dropped ball though. With that said though, we know that Batra is basically an evil Mothra, uncontrollable, destructive. All this story is told by the twins, known as the Cosmos. No, not that Cosmos, or not that Cosmo, but this Cosmos. Oh, and the story is also told on the cliche ancient cave wall. Those things are always accurate. From there, Mothra's egg is rounded up and hatched, and we get the arrival of Godzilla, Mothra, Batra all meeting together in this epic triple threat in the ocean. Eventually, what happens is leads to Godzilla and Batra, who are battling and lost at the bottom of the sea into a volcano. Okay, let's stop right there and talk about this film. I love this battle sequence. Honestly, I think it's only the second underwater battle sequence we've seen since Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, which, it's kind of wild it's been that long. The special effects in this movie are dazzling. Great use of coloration, effects from Godzilla's atomic breath, even glitter effects from Mothra's wings. Both Mothra and Batra, this iteration of Mothra, have lasers, so this time around, Mothra is not entirely defenseless. On top of that, we have a great battle sequence where this final battle takes place. Look at that, a giant Ferris wheel. I don't know, I like that little touch. I love it. If you're one of those people that watches these movies and you want your fill of kaiju battling, then guess what? I've got some good news for you because there is plenty of it with Mothra and Batra teaming up to fend off Godzilla. Really, unfortunately, I can't say a lot more about this film. Everything just kinda happened so fast leading up to the end, with Batra taking the fall. Then suddenly this movie kinda throws oh hey, there's a larger asteroid on the way. It will strike in 1999, and Mothra is keeping a promise to Batra to destroy that asteroid that may wipe out all life on Earth. Mothra keeps this promise and takes on the task herself. That's essentially this movie, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, there's just really not a lot of substance to the overall storyline. It feels like there's an idea there. It's just not explored any further than it could be, though. I always like to say that Batra is the key aspect that could have been explored deeper. It's a great kaiju, I love it, how it's presented as a polar opposite of Mothra, which represents harmony and peace. And it's kinda nice to see another version of a classic monster that's not a mecha. Oftentimes I feel like if I could rewire this movie, I would have had Godzilla and Mothra putting aside their differences to destroy Batra, but while keeping Godzilla an anti-hero all at the same time. As for the asteroid though, we could leave that to Mothra to destroy, due to the fact that that's a problem she sees to the entire planet Earth. But for Batra, I don't really get why he made this promise to Mothra, due to the fact that what does it matter to him? He's out to destroy the planet in the first place. Then there's a side of me that often wonders, was this movie and the asteroid angle supposed to lead to bigger things? One idea that I really speculate about is probably the sheer fact of the alleged return of King Ghidorah that was supposed to be released. I believe there were 2 iterations of this film, but there is one in the early 90s that was planned to follow up Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah that never quite happened. The idea was to go ahead and follow up King Ghidorah with a movie that's even truer to King Ghidorah's origin than what we saw in the last movie. I mean, really, King Ghidorah originated from a meteor. It feels like this was all part of the plan. But really, this is all speculation on my end. What do I know? I'm not the end-all say-all. I'm just speculating about an idea. It feels like the whole thing about the asteroid heading towards Earth was headed somewhere bigger. It's just that we quite didn't see it. But what we got is what we got in the film. Go ahead and check out Godzilla vs. Mothra. If you are one that loves special effects and kaiju battles, it'll give you a lot. But I feel like this movie is probably my least favorite. I debate whether it's this movie or another movie that's my least favorite Heisei era movie. In that case, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Fortunately, the next Godzilla movie goes hard and brings a new key important storyline that will serve as some relevance and importance for the next 3 Godzilla movies. That's not the only thing though, it will resort to the last movie to bring up an idea that will make Mechagodzilla happen in the first place. So get ready, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, on the way next, and I have a lot to say about that movie. Thank you for your support, stay tuned, appreciate you guys.